Stellar's different because we have a slightly different lens on things, and we're creating those everyday financial services for the folks that are the global majority, frankly, the ones that are out there and like larger than our numbers, but don't either have access to all the tools that we do or have chosen that banking isn't really for them. They don't want to be banked for some reason, or maybe they can't be, and so they've chosen this as a way to get them there. That is sort of the world that we look at when we build. And so I think competition is necessary, important. We don't want to end up with the same kind of software that we have today for traditional financial infrastructure. It doesn't allow for borders to be breached, and it doesn't allow for things to be able to move smoothly. And I think if we don't have competition, that's where we end up again. So I love the competition. I think we're best. But I want us to have somebody out there that we're constantly trying to make sure that we're competing with.
Here we're with Denelle Dixon of the Stellar Development Foundation. Denelle, thank you for joining me on the Defiant. It's great to have you.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for coming and for being here at Meridian.
I'd love to talk about Meridian, but first, I want to learn more about your background. I'm kind of fascinated by, just like a strong woman in leadership in the blockchain space. Love to see that.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell your story, like what led you to this industry and to join Stellar?
Yeah, so I was a trial lawyer when my first professional job. I went to law school and then I came out and I practiced law, but I did the focus on like being in the courtroom piece, and so that was sort of like my thing, and I loved it. But I realized after I represented a lot of clients in tech, and I realized that I loved doing what I did, but that if I stayed too long, I would never leave, and then I would never get to explore a bunch of new things. And so I went to work for one of my clients after that, which was Yahoo at the time, very popular. It was it was crazy in terms of the booming tech side. And so going in there, I learned a lot more about the business side, and I also was really deep in the technology and really deep into product, and that was really fun. And then from there, it sort of just like I went and did other tech companies, and then really focused on, I went to private equity, which was completely, had a total dark spot with respect to private equity. I had no idea really what that entailed, but going there, I actually spent a bunch of time in London and in Guernsey during that time period, really focusing on like building portfolio businesses and thinking about which businesses to invest in. And it made it so that it's a really hard leap to go from a lawyer to do other things in the business side normally, and I was super lucky. So much of it takes luck and like curiosity, and so I was able to do that, which led me eventually to Mozilla, and I spent time at Mozilla doing a mix of many things, and in the end was really running like some of the product, the business side, and the operations. And at that time, so Mozilla is a mission-based organization. We were owned by a nonprofit, they still are, even though it was a for-profit entity that I worked at. And so it was through that I actually met Jed. Jed was introduced to me through one of my former CEOs at Mozilla. And but it was sort of that like really, really interesting focus, and the trifecta is what I like to call it, of business, policy, and tech. That's what I got to do at Mozilla. And so when Jed came to meet with me, I honestly, at the time, I didn't know that he was looking for an executive director or a CEO. I thought he was looking for a board member. So it was a really interesting conversation. It was like halfway through, I was like, oh, that's what you want to talk about. But I was super intrigued because I felt like working in this space was sort of a way to do over the stuff that I had done on Web 2. Because in Web 2, I think we made a lot of mistakes. We didn't engage with regulators. We felt like we knew everything, and we didn't try to learn what the outcomes were that people were trying to not let happen. And so I was super intrigued by taking all of my learnings from Web 2 and applying it over into the Web 3 space. We didn't call it Web 3 then, into blockchain, to say, we need to do this right. We need to engage with the regulatory infrastructure. We need to talk to policymakers as much as we can. And we really then need to get to a place where we create the outcomes that we all want. Plus, I love the business side, and the tech was just fascinating.
Amazing. Okay, so at the Stellar Foundation, what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, I mean, our mission at the foundation, and this is a mission that we, Jed sort of like created it from the very beginning, but we put the words around it, creating equitable access to the global financial system. That's a huge mission. It's got tons of challenge in it, but also it takes time to do that. That ultimately is what I would love to see, but I like to think about it in terms of bite-sized chunks. And so when I first came on, I wanted to really embrace the open source nature of not just the code, but also the organization, to really grow us in a way that we were transparent and open about our work, which is super important to me because of all the time I'd spent at Mozilla, which was an open source project as well. And so that is a lot of, like, being that transparency piece sort of means that everything that you do, you're holding yourself accountable because you're being very open about what you're doing. And so I loved that piece, and that is something that we've now carried through all the way. And so while the mission is the thing that I'd like to see happen, first it was like making sure that we're living up to our open source ideals, created a lot of transparency in terms of the work that we're doing. And then we like really take cues from the ecosystem to see what we're going to do next. Building smart contracts was not something that was sort of on the roadmap. When I started, we actually felt like we didn't need them because there was so much you could do on the network without them. And then it became all like together clear that it was an important piece. I think all of the work that we do lines up to the mission in sometimes indirect ways, but there's like dotted lines and straight lines. And I think that's the way I think about it. Like ultimately it's the mission, but there's pieces that we need to get to along the way.
So like the North Star is creating equitable financial access. How does Stellar then fit into the broader blockchain industry with like so many competing layer ones and now layer twos? Because there's like different visions for blockchain founders, and I interview them all the time, and so some will say my blockchain is going to be the blockchain, and there might be others, but like no, like ours will take over, or others will say no, like we're part of this like broader ecosystem. They will each have their own niche. Like how do you see Stellar in this?
It's such a great question, and again, I take my learnings from my prior work. We are one. And the Stellar is excellent for payments and everyday financial services. It's excellent for asset issuance. It creates a tremendous amount of value and then opportunity for end users, whether they be companies or individuals. Competition creates and enforces the need to constantly innovate. We wouldn't have built smart contracts on Stellar if we didn't see competition out there successfully bringing builders to their networks because they had smart contracts. I hope one blockchain does not sort of take all of it, because if it does, you lose that opportunity to constantly be innovating because you need that. We see so much of this from the Web 2 days. Like one of the reasons why browsers became such an important vision and window and door into the world of the web is because there was competition around it. When Firefox was started, so Firefox is the browser that is built by Mozilla. It was started because Microsoft had a 95% market share. There's no innovation. It was like not as user-friendly design. It wasn't as simple. And also there was just like this lockup on how to get and access the internet. And so with Firefox, then came Chrome. The only reason Chrome exists is because Firefox was built. That actually created a huge amount of competition in the marketplace, so there was a significant number of others. Now, what we also learned is that sometimes when you have that competition, there is a winner-take-all market. I don't see that in blockchain. I see that there are opportunities, like Ethereum is amazing for what Ethereum does, like trading use cases, being able to store value, but also being able to like really create those opportunities for people that have money, that have access to create more of both. Stellar's different because we have a slightly different lens on things, and we're creating those everyday financial services for the folks that are the global majority, frankly, the ones that are out there and like larger than our numbers, but don't either have access to all the tools that we do or have chosen that banking isn't really for them. They don't want to be banked for some reason, or maybe they can't be, and so they've chosen this as a way to get them there. That is sort of the world that we look at when we build. And so I think competition is necessary, important. We don't want to end up with the same kind of software that we have today for traditional financial infrastructure. It doesn't allow for borders to be breached, and it doesn't allow for things to be able to move smoothly. And I think if we don't have competition, that's where we end up again. So I love the competition. I think we're best. But I want us to have somebody out there that we're constantly trying to make sure that we're competing with.
Makes sense. And also, you said Stellar, your strength is in payments and banking the unbanked, like bringing financial services to emerging markets and those that don't have access right now.
Or have chosen not to get access. So it's not necessarily unbanked. Maybe they choose not to be banked.
Okay, so that's a very difficult segment to go after. It's like, there's a reason why they don't have access to financial services, right? It's maybe they have, I don't know, they're in like remote places, or they have very low income. For many different reasons, it's hard for them to access banking. But you're here saying, okay, no, like we can access this segment, we can provide these opportunities. So how like what's the strategy to get to them?
Well, I think it's really interesting because people a lot of times assume that people who don't have bank accounts or that can't get bank accounts or that have chosen not to participate in that part of traditional financial infrastructure, that they don't have robust financial lives. And the truth is they do. They just are really innovative and creative about how they do that because the tools have either not been developed for them or they've chosen not to use them for whatever reason. Maybe it's the banks that are owned by the governments that make it so that they're concerned about that for lots of reasons. Government could pull the money or whatever, you name the problem, they see it. So, but they're robust in terms of like what they've done to be able to create a vivid financial life without having this infrastructure we're used to. So it's a difficult population sometimes when you don't have access to the internet or you don't have access to a smart device. It might make it more complicated, although Stellar is oftentimes run on feature phones for people to be able to do that. And so wallets can be built for that. But I don't think that they want innovation. No, I was gonna say, I don't think that they're not out there looking for things because they actually want innovation. They are developing innovation on their own sometimes, and they want these creative tools to be able to bring them into the financial infrastructure to allow them to have, savings accounts maybe without going to the banks, or to be able to lend, to borrow, to send money to family. And these tools are there for them. So while some of them might be challenging to reach if they don't have the access to the internet or smartphones, they're still what we can build for them, and our builders can build for them, the folks that build in the ecosystem, and they are doing that. And so it's one of the things that I think I'm most proud of is that we build tools and then we hand it over to the ecosystem and say, go take these and like build for the communities around you because only you know how to solve their problems. And sometimes we don't even know what their problems are.
So there's this perception that maybe from outsiders to the industry that crypto is only used for like illicit use cases, for money laundering, or like just for speculation. Right. From you kind of being at the forefront of like the Stellar blockchain, what do you say to these perceptions?
I think that it's incumbent upon us in the industry to take the time to understand why. So much of that is fear-based. It's because it's a new technology. It's not owned or controlled by anyone. And this is money. We're dealing with value, and those things can be lost. And there's in the financial services sector, why so many people don't choose to be banked or choose to use those services is because sometimes they've gotten screwed and they don't want to be put in a situation using new technology where that's going to happen to them. And so we have to embrace each of those three things that I said and say, let me explain why this is not true. So from the transparency standpoint, from the immutability of the blockchain standpoint, all of these things demonstrate why it's actually really bad for illicit finance. And so instead of being offended by it or taking that and saying, you don't understand, that's part of what we did in the Web 2 world, by the way. When we were focused on, when there was this whole uproar on privacy in the early days of the web, and I was actually part of this to say, we don't need the government to know or understand what we're doing, because we know and we understand, and we'll just create our standards and we'll just fix this all. And we were completely wrong. We should have engaged more deeply. We wouldn't then have cookie footers all over and all the things that you have on websites now, because we would have explained more about the technology and brought the governments in. And that's what we're doing now. So we're trying to like right that sort of wrong of like how, well, at least that's what I think is important, to really bring them in and say, I know that it's fearful to look at new technology that has such an impact on humans because of the fact that it deals with money. But let's explain why illicit finance isn't the challenge for you. And so clearly that's wrong. Like if you talk to investigators, like government investigators all over the world will tell you that actually blockchain is great from an illicit finance standpoint because they can follow the money in a way they historically couldn't. In terms of like that this is just about, there is speculation on blockchain, and it's fine. People can speculate so long as they know that they're speculating, right? So it's that we need to have like those kinds of notifications up for users to be like, oh, hey, like this is an area that it's on you to figure this out, which is different than the financial services model of traditional infrastructure. So some of this stuff is actually things we just need to like engage and talk more about. So I chuckle sometimes when I hear the illicit finance one, but then I try to put my hat on to say, why is that the thing that they're thinking? And then try to get to the bottom of it and really explain it.
Makes sense. And then, so you've mentioned how you're engaging with regulators this time around. How do you think the industry should be regulated from a high level? Of course, like not getting into like very specifics, but should there be a regulatory framework that's made specifically for cryptocurrencies? Should the industry be regulated with existing laws? There's the like KYC aspect to it. Should all like money transmitters get an existing license? Like what's your like overall view on that?
My big picture, so 10,000 foot level, I think about the fact that what regulation and policy should be focused on are outcomes. Outcomes we don't want to see, and then outcomes we do want to see. And so make sure that the regulation attacks the ones that we don't want to see and supports the ones that we want to see. And so if you think about it, I used to call this when, again, back in the Web 2 days, I would talk about this as principles-based regulation. If you try to get too far into the weeds from a regulatory standpoint, you're going to be outpaced by the tech stack. It's going to run past you, and then you're going to be trying to like fit it into something that didn't work. And so principles-based regulation that's focused on outcomes is the way that I like to think about it. I don't necessarily believe that there needs to be like regimes that's just for crypto and blockchain, but I will say that there are some areas where there's not good coverage. And I think stablecoin legislation, we already have it in Europe with respect to like MiCA and how that covers it and how it like sets a standard. We need to see that in the United States. We don't see that there. We have it in other countries as well. But stablecoins are like a key area where it's a new thing. And so we should probably be looking at it from that standpoint. But I don't always believe that we don't fit into existing regulation. I think sometimes we do. And then there's times that we don't, and we need to be thoughtful about how many different pieces of regulation we have to put together. And sometimes it's about waiting for the technology to sort of get to its like maturity, and then you can go, okay, what should we do? Where are we missing? And what we're seeing, and frankly what we've seen over the last couple of years, is, especially in the US, I'll just be honest, and sometimes in other countries, even in the global south, I've seen some of this too, where there's just fear-based regulation because they're like, wait, this could hurt people because you could lose money. And that's not, again, reactive regulation is a bad idea. So again, that's about engagement from the business side, from the industry side, as well as from the public policy side. And I think we could sort of tackle some of that.
I think probably the hardest part about regulating blockchains is how can you regulate blockchains, right? Because especially on the like purely DeFi non-custodial side of things, there is really no way to enforce that regulation. If you're dealing with non-custodial wallets and people just transacting directly with smart contracts, so that must be like, from what you were saying, just putting like getting in the shoes of regulators, that must be very scary. So how do you think that should be approached? Like, is it on kind of the on-off ramps that's where regulators should focus, or should they try to like intervene or regulate DeFi itself?
So that's a great question, and I'm going to say two things. I don't know yet, but what I do know is this: if we jump in right now to try to regulate, we're going to miss a bunch of stuff, because we actually haven't seen that sector quiet to a place where there's like continuity and we know it's actually going to happen in the DeFi space. The other thing I'll say is there already are ways to regulate. When you think about non-custodial wallets, I don't think that there's an issue. Like you shouldn't regulate non-custodial wallets. They're just a window. They're like when I talked about the browser and the importance of the browser, it gave you that door into the internet so that you could then do everything you wanted to do. Wallets, non-custodial wallets, do the same thing. You don't regulate at that level because they don't collect KYC, they don't custody your keys, they don't custody any assets. So that's not where to regulate. But it's when you get into a system and if you see that there are people making money because they're defrauding somebody, there's already ways to regulate that. We already know, like that's consumer protection. Every country has it, you can regulate there. So I think we have to be careful to try to put regulation around a tech stack, because that's what DeFi is. DeFi is a tech stack. It's like you can use this technology to do a lot of different things. If you had like a particular DAO out there or something that was like, basically just like taking people's money away, or they put like a ripcord in the code that you could then pull and they could get all the money. Well, come on. Yeah, of course they need to but that's consumer protection. So I just think we need to be careful. And there could be places that regulation is important, but I don't think we know that yet. And so one of the things that we asked way back in the day when we were talking about the internet, which is a decentralized network, very similar to this, is we said, if you could just like restrain from regulating the tech stack, and think about things on top that you want to regulate, let's do that. So what I'd say is that's still tech stack. DeFi is still tech stack. So let's restrain ourselves right now and let's wait to see what happens. And then there might be areas where regulation needs to be applicable. But like we know, like on the on and off ramping, you can tackle like if there's bad actors that came on and they like did the rug pull and then they went off and you can see who they are. So it's an immutable record. That's the beauty of it. It's immutable across the board so you can follow the money. And I think that that's sort of the way we need to think about it now. And that's certainly what I encourage. And I see like one of the things that I think governments are doing is they're sort of, while they're fearful, they're restraining there. And I think that that's a useful thing for us to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and now we're here in London for Stellar's Meridian Conference. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about that. Like, how many of these have you organized? Like, what's the attendance like? Why London? Yeah.
So this is our 6th. 2 of them were virtual because it was during COVID. And it is kind of remarkable for us to be able to bring the ecosystem together. When I first came on, I came on in May 1st of 2019. We did our first Meridian in November of 2019. As I mentioned before, it was my way of like really helping the ecosystem to see that we're an open source project and we need the ecosystem to participate. And so we called it Meridian because you think the meridian across the globe. So it brings like the globe together and we're the convener. And so that's why we started Meridian. It was again, like getting back to open source roots and really thinking about like what our role in the ecosystem is. And so we started in Mexico City in 2019. We had 2 virtual, I think it was 2 virtual after that because of COVID. And then we've been to Rome, Madrid, and now here. We came here, we think a lot about the locations for Meridian. Some of it comes to like easy visa access because we want people to be able to participate from all over the globe. We have, I think here we have over 65 different countries represented at this Meridian. I could be wrong on that number, it could be 85, but anyway, it's a big number. And that's important for us because again, like the global nature of this network is so important to represent. So it's visa. We also look at where do we see change and evolution happening. In London, there was I think you're gonna see more talent and more innovation coming out of the ecosystem and also out of just blockchain here in London. They're showing more of an openness to it. And also, frankly, ease of use for people to get in and out. And when I say people, I mean the people that are traveling like 11, 10, 14, 18 hours to get there. You want them to come and feel relaxed and happy in that environment. And so those are the things we look at. The other part of it is like the locations that we do. Like this location, you can see it's like just so unique. We try not to do like traditional, we've never done like a traditional hotel. We have like cool venues so that it feels more like us, which is a bit more like gritty and quirky and different and not like the corporate side. So we look at that, but it goes down to just really having that human connection and making sure that we are fulfilling the promise of this, like we're the convener and for this open source, this amazing open source project.
Nice. What are some of the major announcements that have come out of the conference?
Well, today we announced with Paxos that Paxos is launching USDL. It's the lift dollar on Stellar by the end of the year. Why is that important? It is a yield-bearing asset, and I think that is so crucial to have that kind of an asset available, particularly to the global majority in the global south, where they can choose then to be able to have risk-free treasury. So they can look at it and they can hold it, they can spend it, they can do what they want with it, but when they do have it in their wallets, they'll be able to have yield on it. So that's a really important one. We launched yesterday with Idris the Akuna wallet. We announced the Akuna wallet, which is a wallet that's focused on Ghana and the creative economy there, and why that's so important. And because I love the follow-through piece, like it's really important to me to see like where we started and where we finished. We brought Idris last year to Meridian, and he was so excited about the tech stack and what the tech stack could do for all of the issues that he cares so much about. And we were able to like come together really over the last year to pull together this really wonderful opportunity to bring his like background in terms of the creative side to focus on artists and artists of all kinds, so creatives of all kind, and to be able to bring this ease of use for them to get payment to these folks that are exporting their talent globally and need to get paid. So we talked about that yesterday. That goes out in pilot in the next few weeks, and that's really exciting. MoneyGram talked about the fact that they've launched their non-custodial wallet, and that's huge. Let me do the pull through there. They announced it last year. We had a pilot program for the MoneyGram non-custodial wallet last year. And so now it's out in the market, which is great because they're a 100-year-old traditional financial infrastructure, and now they've like built this. We had Atala talk about the fact that they're a micro-lending company, and they're doing micro-lending using Stellar, and they launched a non-custodial wallet as well. And so there's a lot of really fun stuff there. We have analytics companies like Dune who have launched here. We have a relationship with Mastercard, and they launched that here. There's so many things I'm going to get some of them wrong, but there's just so much great activity, and I'm kind of loving just being here with everyone. It's super exhausting, but like the 3 days together is like it lasts me through the year, so we can come back together next year and see what's next.
It's interesting to see the mix of like crypto native companies, but also just fintechs and like traditional financial companies. Like you have like Mastercard and MoneyGram and Stripe, like all here. Franklin Templeton. We just interviewed a few of those names. So you have kind of the importance of like bringing in the more like traditional world in with partnerships, and also just like innovating.
And why is that important? And I think that when I first started in this space, it was still the narrative that we are going to disrupt all of these financial players. We never believed that, by the way, at Stellar. We believed that we were going to enhance traditional financial infrastructure, and that's essentially what we focused on doing. And I think that anyone who thought that we were going to completely disrupt and get away from all of the technology that's out there sort of ignored the fact that on and off ramping is actually done very well using traditional financial infrastructure. So we can work with that, and we can make that part of sort of our journey and our story. And so I think it's great. And also I'll just say that having more traditional players use the network and build on the network, it hardens the network, it makes it better, it makes it so that it's like tried, true, and tested, and bringing those names into this environment, into blockchain generally, but into Stellar more specifically, and the one that I focus on, is it makes it so that there's more trust built there with regulators and with humans.
Makes sense. Okay, and then to wrap up, like what's next for Stellar? Like what are the major updates that you're working on, or like what's exciting in the next few months?
Well, I'm still excited to see what happens on Soroban, like the smart contract platform. It's only a few months old. I really want to see it grow, and that we're seeing new participants in Sorbonne come like every couple weeks, and that's awesome, but we need to see more and more and more of that. The reason why that matters is because the more builders, the more developers we have on Stellar, the more robust the ecosystem becomes, and then we have, like, I like to think about it as distributed ownership of this big thing, and so that's one of the things that's really important. We also are going to see smart wallets. We're going to see passkeys being used. There's a lot of really fun stuff that's going to protect the end user and allow the end user to like sort of have that autonomy and that the way that they engage with the network in a unique way. So those are fun things. And mostly we're just going to keep on doing a lot of the stuff that we're already doing. We're going to bring more on and off ramps. We're going to have more assets issued on the network that are valuable to the folks in the global majority, the folks that are in the Western countries as well. So we're going to bring all that together and make it so we're just going to continue to pursue the mission. The nice thing about what I think we've done at Stellar is that we sometimes with FOMO, we watch like the hype, we watch the meme coins, we watch the things that happen on other chains, and when we fear that we're missing out on all these things, and then we look at what we're doing and we realize that there's so much activity, there's so much demand for the work that we're doing, and we stay focused on what we're doing, and then we get the outcomes that we think are pretty amazing, like working with the UNHCR and getting aid into different countries. These are all things that, you know, it's not only just to feel good, it's actually really changing lives and creating like real opportunity for people. And that's why I came into this space.
It was great chatting with you. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.